All right. All right. Recording is going now. Okay. Now that that is officially happening, our lovely panelists for the today are Dr. Andrea Woodson Smith, who is a former wheelchair basketball Paralympian, as well as a National Wheelchair Basketball Association Hall of Famer. And then Alex Curry, who is the Director of Sports Medicine for the adaptive athletics at the University of Alabama. So two really exciting perspectives here, both athlete and sports medicine professional here for us today. And then in lieu of sort of filling out their entire bios for you, our first question is for our panelists is to that you could please share a little bit about your professional or athletic background and your experience with adaptive sport.
I'll go ahead and jump on in first. I'm Dr. Andrea Woodson Smith, and I started my athletic career at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So I was a basketball player there. And during that time, I developed severe arthritis that pretty much took me out of playing basketball. When I went to work on my PhD in Texas, they found out that I was eligible to play wheelchair basketball. And so they recruited me to play wheelchair basketball at that point. Um, and it took me a little bit to really adjust to the game of wheelchair basketball because you lose your side to side, your horizontal movements. And so getting adjusted to learning angles and forward and backward movements versus side to side movements was very challenging and frustrating. Um, but once I got involved in the sport and became competitive in the sport, then I also tried out for Team USA. Didn't make the first round in 2003, then made the second round in 2004. Got removed due to medical problems, and then came back in 2006, and then retired after 2006, and then came back out of retirement in 2009 and did 2009 to 2012. And then after 2012, I played locally until 2017, and then went back into kind of a semi-retirement and came back this year to start playing again, just locally. And so I also have worked on the NWBA, several of their committees, high performance committees, coaching committees. I've also been a part of the Move United, which is one of the largest adaptive sports organizations in the US, and been a part of their DEI task force. I have started a master's degree program in adaptive sports at NCCU. And so that allows more students to become more familiar with adaptive sports and can go either a coaching track, strength and conditioning track, or administration track. So that way it allows more people to get involved in adaptive sports and be able to move up into the different rankings and divisions and levels within adaptive sports.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
As said, I am the director of sports medicine at the University of Alabama for adapted athletics. I'm a certified athletic trainer. Also am on the USA level. I got started in adapted athletics kind of by accident. I was looking for a job and had a couple offers, but the minute I visited Alabama's facility, I accepted 2 days later and moved 4 weeks later from across the country. I was lucky enough to start my USA career with USA women's wheelchair basketball with under 25 in the fall of last year. And then I was named the athletic trainer for the senior women's team in January of this year. And I went to Paris with that team. I've also helped on Move United as a medical coverage in their last two national events in Birmingham, Hoover area for their track and field and programs like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. For our second question, we know this is just an Olympic and Paralympic year here. So considering how timely that is and both of your experiences, would you be able to share about your experiences at the Paralympics? Kind of the highs, lows, any of the big notes that you have?
I can take this one first since mine was a couple months ago. I had an incredible experience. I think a lot of athletic trainers dream about the opportunity to represent their country at an Olympic or Paralympic, and that dream happened for me this year. When we talk Paris sport, we talk a lot about advocacy and seeing that movement grow, and I feel like Paris was one of those games that it's finally growing into a better light. I think LA, ramping into LA, offers us as a country an even better opportunity to really highlight Paris sport and get everyone on board. The village was incredible. We had an incredible sports medicine team. If you guys, we have like a US sports medicine facility within our building that we work with all different athletic trainers, physicians, chiropractors, massage therapists, sports psychologists, nutritionists. So we have everyone in country to help. But there's also a hospital in the village. So I was able to like take an athlete to get an MRI. We had someone who needed an emergency root canal while there. We got that done with the dentist there. So that was incredible. But I think like putting on those USA colors and like being there to support our team was I'm getting chills talking about it here. One of the best experiences I've had, and what we took home silver and watching the girls fight to get to that was incredible.
Yes, I would definitely say the village is the top notch um, area within the Paralympics. Just being able to have your own city within a city is amazing, and you have a mayor of that city as well within the village, and so that's really amazing that you actually have that. When I went, I was not expecting that. I had no idea that that actually takes place. Um, but I loved when I went and, just knowing about the different Paralympics and the different sport venues, the organization to be able to transform the village from the Olympics and within, what is it, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks to the Paralympic village is absolutely extraordinary because they have to make things accessible. And, they don't, I think we're very fortunate in the Paralympic side because they run through it with the Olympians first and they can get out all the kinks. I know one year they didn't have water. They had to live in separate housing units during, I think it was either during COVID, I think it was during COVID time. And so they were able to get all the kinks out before the Paralympics begins, which is very unique. The other aspect is the professionalism. It's so much different than college sports and um, professional sports, even. It's another level to that. And the stage is tremendous. The pressures that you receive from that level is absolutely extraordinary. Some of the downfalls that I saw were, and I don't know if this was in Paris or if they fixed the issues, but some of the accessibility features of getting onto the basketball court or getting access to the court in a gym for basketball was somewhat challenging because they had several wires on the floor and then they have a very short ramp to get onto the basketball court. Now, I don't know if that was changed in Paris or not, but that was probably one of the downfalls that I saw. Um, Also, I don't know if you saw this, Alex, you may have, when it comes to USADA and testing of athletes and going into the rooms as well as the bathrooms to be tested for, your anti-drug doping processes. And so some of those facilities were not the best. I think they could definitely choose or select or modify, renovate, whatever you may call it, to make it more suitable for Paralympians to be able to access those types of areas. And so that those were my highlights. Definitely the village because it's a city and it's your town. So they have everything that you need in there. The athletic training rooms facilities was magnificent. You had several athletic trainers in the room and they focus on all the sports across the Paralympics. So you may see your athletic trainer, but then they may have some other resources or some other people that you may need to see for specific areas or injuries that the athlete might be going through. But it's a unique experience. It's amazing experience to have and experience and go through that.
I'll speak a little bit. They fixed all of the accessibility. One thing that we left because Christina, who was on year 2012, it was our head coach, and she talked about how accessible the Paris Paralympics were. And we had very minor things that we would have changed. One was where the village was, there were some hidden curbs. I tripped over them a couple of times, and that's hard when you're in a wheelchair. But other than that, the court was smooth to get on and off. WADA and USADA had huge single bathroom stalls, so there was a lot of room for chairs and obviously the person who's testing you. So everyone was very impressed with how Paris did it, which was so nice to see that they went above and beyond. And I hope we do that in 4 years.
It'll be very interesting to see the difference from 96 when we held it in Atlanta to 2024. I mean 2028 in LA. So I'm excited. I'm hoping that I'll get to 1028, whether as an athlete or not, probably not, but it'll be exciting to see and compare the differences from then till now.
Awesome. Thank you both for those thoughtful answers. For our final panel question, we'll hop into some discussion from the group. Is based on your experiences with adaptive sport, what would you want an athletic trainer or other sports medicine professional who maybe doesn't have as much experience with that patient population to know?
I can start. I had no experience with adapted sport before I took the job at Alabama. I will be honest, my athletic training program really didn't go into Paralympics or adapted sport, and that's why I do a lot of these talks. I speak to a lot of athletic training programs and PT programs to change that. And I was honest with Alabama. I said, I have no experience with this, but I have professional and collegiate athletic training experience, so I know how to keep athletes on the court. I'm just going to need help with some of those disabilities and understanding some of the niches that I wouldn't necessarily have known. I think the biggest thing is my athletes know their body better than any other population I've ever worked with. And I trust them. And typically in my history and the questions I ask and their answers are going to lead me the direction that I need to be led to be successful. And like, for example, I had an athlete with a spinal cord injury who actually fractured 4 bones in his foot. He flew forward in a weight room accident, and his big thing during the history portion was, I'm having pain muscle spasms. These aren't my normal muscle spasms. These are pain spasms. And because I listened to that, I sent him up to our team physicians and got x-rays, and turns out he had 4 fractures. And then we had to figure out what we were going to do with those 4 fractures. And so I would say that, and treat them like humans. I can't tell you how many times I'm like traveling with USA and I'm sitting next to like my staff who most of them are in wheelchairs, and a flight attendant would only talk to me because they couldn't answer for themselves, or like they would say, how do they need to be boarded? Can you talk to them? How they know how they need to be boarded better than I do? Like, I'll help carry their backpack maybe, but they know. And so I think this misconception of physical disability and intellectual disability and how the two collide, and now some do collide, but not as common as people act, and that really is hard to watch my athletes and friends go through. So treat them like a person, like you would any other athlete, and that will take you a long way. And they're great at advocating for themselves, and they're going to teach you a lot too. And being willing to listen and be taught is the other thing I would recommend.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I would say you have your knowledge of the body, the physiology and anatomy of the body makeup, regardless. I think from there, then you have to know disabilities. And you don't have to know necessarily all disabilities, but if you know the main categories of disabilities, that kind of gives you the insight of how to work with an athlete that has or a specific disability that falls within a category, general category of the specific disability. Um, and so with that, knowing how to read the signs of what goes along with the body. And so if you see, if you see coloration, you know that something's wrong. Knowing about, one of the things that is very important is knowing about spinal cord injuries and things that affect how a person, when athletes perspire, knowing which athletes don't, and knowing how to make sure that that environment is appropriate for that athlete to train in, to compete in, because that is very critical. Even not even just the environment for them to train, but it may even be the environment that, with the Paralympics, you have an opening and closing ceremony. And if it's freezing cold and an athlete doesn't have regulation of their temperature, of their body temperature, then you've got to make sure that you have things in place that are going to support them for 4 hours outside in the cold. And so just knowing the different types of categories of disability so that you can manage anything that goes on, knowing the functions of an athlete versus the limitations of an athlete is very important, because yes, athletes, we all have limitations, but if you put most of your emphasis on those limitations, you're not going to see what functions they have. And a lot of times we function a lot greater than the expectation from those who don't have disabilities. And so look at the function of what you want the athlete to do and build from there. Know of different, get into research of looking at what's out there. There's a lot of facilities, a lot of gyms that cater to athletes, individuals with different types of disabilities, and knowing how to make modifications for different types of exercises is key. But at the same time, just like Alex said, listen to your athletes, because more than likely, if you're working with that athlete, they already have experience of what they can and cannot do, or the modifications that they use. And once you ask that question, they're going to give you what modifications they already know. You might be able to tweak some of those to make it better for their function and efficiency. But like I said, go out. Instagram is probably one of the best places to look for different gyms, different expertise, trainers, different types of trainers, to find what is out there, who's out there teaching it, and then use those people as well as your resources. I think, a lot of times we get into these asylums and, I'm the only person who's ever done this. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what to do. I don't know who else is out there doing it. Research it, find someone, contact somebody to ask those questions, and then ask your athletes, because they're always going to come from another place that has a different perspective. And they may know other people who are in athletic training or sports medicine or personal training who already know how to make those modifications. Check with different universities, because there's a lot of universities that are now starting to produce adapted sport programs. And so we always have those available people who want to assist and want to create more athletic trainers who know about, the population of people with physical disabilities. And so, grow from this experience here, create that network of people, so that way we can still continue to grow more and more athletic trainers, sports medicine specialists who can include this population of people into their repertoire.
I absolutely love the comment about letting the athlete tell their function. Um, I'm doing research on that in my PhD currently. If you look at medical books for what most of my athletes should and should not be able to do, they are way outside of that. Yeah, they're like night and day difference, and that's part of the issue with our medical model of disability, which that's a lecture for another day. But making sure that you know what that athlete can do individually and not just listening, like understand, okay, they have a T12 complete spinal cord and understanding that, but letting them say, well, I can do this, this, and this, then you adjust to them. You don't adjust to what the book says the T12 spinal cord should be able to do, because T12s, you know, some of them, they're like, oh, they shouldn't even be able to get out of bed on their own, which is insane. So making sure you listen and focus on what they believe their function is, and then you'll excel so much better.
And also, I'm glad that you said that. You know, I used to teach an adapted fitness class, and I have medical paperwork that comes with every student that comes in. And on that paperwork, it will say cannot participate in fitness. And I have to go back and rebut that, because yes, they can participate in fitness. It might just be a modification or a different level at which they participate, but you have to go back to the medical system and let them know. You know, make sure that those athletes tell the medical doctors, make sure you conversate with those medical doctors and say, I know you're saying that this athlete cannot, but these are the different types of modifications that we can instill in which that athlete can still have function and be functionable. Because a lot of times, especially when you have athletes who have quadriplegia, everyone's going to say, absolutely not. They cannot do anything, and they are completely wrong. And so you may have to be the person who starts educating some of the medical staff so that they know what people are able to do due to different modifications and accommodations.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for those in-depth and detailed answers. About to stop the recording now before we transition to this open sort of group discussion. Just for our folks who will be watching the recording, do want to mention that when we do post this to our website, we will try and pull together a few different resources for you to start looking at, to kind of start digging into some of that information that both Alex and Dr. Woodson-Smith talked about getting into. So with that,